Hello, my name is Stuart Couch and I'm the owner of Hatteras Realty. As a way of background, we have 3 offices located on this 70-mile strip of land we call home, representing about 570 beach vacation homes. Today is Tuesday, October 18th, 2011. I want to give you a general update on conditions here on Hatteras Island and talk a little about the trip insurance and coverage for those of you who had purchased a policy. The weather is really nice, the ocean is calm, and the surf fishermen are catching tailor blues, sea mullet, flounder, and spots from the surf. From Avon south to Hatteras Village, and including Ocracoke Island, most of the evidence of Hurricane Irene has been cleaned up. The tri-village areas of Rodanthe, Waves, and Salvo was hit pretty hard by this storm, and it's going to take some time to put those villages back together again. The good news is Highway 12 is open, and there are lots of visitors here on Hatteras Island, and we and all the other businesses are open. It sure is nice to see the kiteboarders and the windsurfers having a great time in the Pamlico Sound, the kayakers paddling here and there, surfboarders riding the ocean swells, umbrellas dotting the beach with families enjoying the sun and surf, and surf fishermen casting into the ocean hoping for the big one. The temporary bridge is up and one can come and go freely to the mainland. I don't think I've ever seen a more beautiful bridge than the one that's up there right now. We have plenty of great rental homes for you, and we'd love to have you come to Hatteras Island for your well-deserved getaway. Lots of reservations are coming in. I'm really happy that many of you are opting right now to get your Hatteras Island fix. All right, let's talk about trip insurance for a minute. CSA has a majority of the trip insurance business here on Hatteras Island. Like all insurance policies, some events are covered and some are not. The covered items are identified in the policy plan when you received your lease from us. It would be unfair and indeed unwise for any trip insurance company to have an open-ended exposure and unlimited liability for all events and calamities, either known or unknown. The litmus test for coverage has always been from the time the civil authorities have said get out to the time they say, okay, you can come back now. The third-party test is the mandatory evacuation. You'll find this identified in Section D on page 16 of the Certificate of Insurance filed with the state. I believe the website where you can view the certificate is on the front page of the pamphlet you received. This clause, mandatory evacuation, has served us well for the past 12 years. During Hurricane Isabel in 2003, a breach was cut between the villages of Frisco and Hatteras. It took 3 months to fill that little breach back in. CSA covered the policyholders that had rented down in Hatteras Village, and they covered them for 3 full months as the evacuation order was still in effect. Coverage ceased when the breach was filled in and the roadway put back and the evacuation order was lifted. For this hurricane, Irene, the new breaches were at S-Curves and also at P Island. And S-Curves is just right outside the village of Rodanthe, and P Island is about 20 miles north of S-Curves, or about 45 miles north of Hatteras Village. For Hurricane Irene, the mandatory evacuation order was lifted, with the only practical access being from the south by 2 ferries, one to Ocracoke Island, then another ferry to Hatteras Island. CSA had nothing to do with the lifting of the mandatory evacuation order, and according to the terms of the policy, coverage ceased. It was tied to mandatory evacuation. It was Dare County that determined that essential services were in place and was safe for visitors to return. I submit that policyholders got what you paid for, which was coverage during the time of the mandatory evacuation. Now, whether you got what you bargained for is a different story. In CSA's defense, who knew that in their coverage area, an island would have 2 or 3 cuts? It would take 7 weeks to fill those cuts back in or build a bridge so you can get here. The cuts are not covered under the terms of the policy, only mandatory evacuation. Now, in that Section D, there's another part of it that talks about a scenario that would cover rock slides and heavy snows in the mountain part of the states. There's no control group in the mountain areas to say there's a mandatory evacuation and you got to get out, etc. So CSA put that in there. That's part of Section D, and they've used that many times in the western part of the state. For here, during Hurricane Irene, CSA did continue to cover those policyholders who had booked in the villages of Rodanthe, Waves, and Salvo, and did so until the lifting of the mandatory evacuation on Monday, October 10th, 2011. Now, Amy Helly, my senior vice president, and I flew to Orlando last week and met with Lee Hughes and Guillaume Debach of CSA. I don't speak for CSA. I'm not affiliated with CSA other than we do offer their trip insurance plans to our guests. I can discuss the generalities of what is happening and hopefully bring you up to speed on current events. CSA is owned by Assist, and they're owned by Egon, who is owned by another company. I think the head company is located in Europe, and they offer insurance throughout the world. I think it is safe for me to say that Monsieur DeBach is a decision maker, and it took some time for this decision maker to come forward, but come forward he has, and he's working hard to find an acceptable solution to this dilemma. Remember, I don't speak for CSA, but they are in negotiation with the North Carolina Department of Insurance about your trip insurance coverage issues. I'm hopeful that an agreement can be reached to offer some coverage to those who would have had a hard time to get here due to limited access to the North Carolina ferry system. One suggestion is that trip delays are part of your coverage, and perhaps that venue can be explored in greater detail. I'm convinced CSA wants to mitigate the situation, and I know for a fact that there are discussions going on right now on how best to extend coverage beyond their policy terms. I would hope that there would be a resolution forthcoming, perhaps within 2 or 3 weeks' time, perhaps sooner. Meanwhile, CSA has agreed to open all claims and work with policyholders and find an acceptable solution to the effects of this very powerful and deadly hurricane. Although I was told that all claims that were filed are being opened and looked at again, I would suggest you give CSA a quick call to confirm that your claim is in a big pile of claims that they still have to work on. They've paid off thousands of claims and have lots more to go through. CSA has paid out millions of dollars and will be paying out millions more as they work their way through that very large pile of claims that they have. If you haven't filed, please do so. I've already said in a previous video I did a couple of weeks ago, I don't want your money. I want to give you a great vacation. That's what I do. In fact, many of our owners have already made concessions to our guests. Many more owners are giving comp days. I will do my best to minimize your exposure because of this storm, but there are no winners due to Hurricane Irene, certainly not on this island. Let's see what CSA and the Department of Insurance can work out. Then come to me. Let's talk about it. Let's see what I can do for you. I hope that this winter the local realtors, along with the insurance companies, can go to the North Carolina General Assembly and clarify the trip insurance options, and if and when that is exhausted, define by law who bears the weather burden risk. This situation is untenable. We're going to define this. You're too important to Hatteras Island, Dare County, Outer Banks, and North Carolina to have been put into this situation. As always, and although I feel like I'm the meat between the sandwich, know that I appreciate your business and look forward to sharing with you our unique and wonderful home that we call Hatteras Island.